Michael and Sarah Carter seemed like the perfect couple until the day Sarah was found dead in their home, the victim of what appeared to be a brutal burglary. But as investigators dug deeper, they uncovered a chilling truth. Michael had been living a double life, fathering a child with another woman, and when Sarah tried to leave, he made sure she never would. Michael and Sarah Carter had the kind of marriage that others envied. To their friends and family, they were the perfect couple, successful, happy, and deeply in love. They lived in a beautiful home in a quiet suburban neighborhood where life seemed peaceful and secure. Michael worked as a financial analyst, earning a good income that provided them with a comfortable lifestyle. Sarah, a kindergarten teacher, was known for her kind heart and nurturing nature. Together, they appeared to have everything: a strong partnership, stability, and a bright future ahead. But beneath the surface, cracks had begun to form. Sarah started noticing changes in Michael's behavior about a year ago. At first they were small. He was spending more time at work, often coming home late and claiming he was overwhelmed with projects. Then, he became more secretive with his phone, always keeping it face down on the table or carrying it with him, even into the bathroom. When Sarah asked him about it, he brushed off her concerns, saying she was overthinking things. Sarah tried to believe him, convincing herself that every marriage had rough patches and that his distance was just a phase. She focused on her work, on planning date nights, and on doing everything she could to bring back the warmth in their relationship. But no matter what she did, Michael remained distant. He barely looked at her the same way anymore, and their conversations had become short and forced. Gone were the days when they would sit together, laughing over dinner or talking about their dreams for the future. One evening, as Sarah scrolled through her social media messages, she noticed something unusual. A message from an unknown sender had appeared in her inbox. She hesitated before opening it, her heart pounding as she read the words, "Your husband is living a double life." Attached to the message was a picture: Michael, standing close to another woman, her arms wrapped around him. They looked happy, too comfortable to be just friends. Sarah's hands trembled as she stared at the image. Her mind raced, trying to make sense of what she was seeing. Maybe it was a misunderstanding. Maybe someone was trying to hurt her. But deep down, she knew the truth. This explained everything: the late nights, the secrecy, the emotional distance. Her perfect marriage was nothing more than an illusion. Determined to find out more, she did something she never thought she would do. She went through Michael's phone when he was in the shower. What she found shattered her completely. Dozens of messages between him and the woman, whose name was Rachel. Their conversations were filled with affection, love, and worst of all, plans for the future. And then she saw the final blow. A message from Rachel: "I can't wait for our baby to be here. We'll finally be a family." Sarah felt the room spin. Not only had Michael been unfaithful, but he had also gotten another woman pregnant. Her entire world collapsed in that moment. The life she thought she had was gone, replaced by a painful truth she could never ignore. Sarah sat in silence, staring at the messages on Michael's phone. Her breathing was shallow, her hands trembling as she scrolled through the texts over and over again, hoping she had misread something. But the words were clear. Michael had been living a double life, and now he was going to have a child with another woman. The betrayal cut deeper than she ever imagined possible. Her mind raced through the past year, replaying every moment that suddenly made sense. The late nights, the unexplained absences, the way he had stopped looking at her the way he used to. All this time she had blamed herself. Maybe she wasn't affectionate enough. Maybe she had been too caught up in work. But now, she knew the truth. It was never about her. It was about Michael making a choice to lie, to deceive, to destroy everything they had built. Her body felt numb as she put the phone down. Confronting him wasn't even a question. She needed answers. She needed to hear him admit what he had done, to explain why he had chosen to betray her like this. She had always believed that if something like this ever happened, Michael would at least be honest, even if the truth hurt. But when she finally faced him, his reaction was nothing like what she had expected. Michael didn't look guilty. He didn't even seem surprised. He simply stared at her as she held up his phone, showing him the messages. For a moment there was silence, an unbearable tension in the air. Then, instead of apologizing, instead of even pretending to feel remorse, he scoffed. His expression shifted into something almost cold, as if he were annoyed rather than caught in the middle of a betrayal. He didn't deny it. He didn't try to explain. Instead, he blamed her. He told her that she had been too focused on other things, that their marriage had become boring, that she hadn't been giving him what he needed. Every word felt like a knife twisting deeper into her chest. How could he stand there and say these things after what he had done? How could he act like she was the reason he had cheated? But it didn't matter anymore. She wasn't going to beg for an explanation, and she certainly wasn't going to listen to his pathetic attempts to justify his actions. She had made up her mind. She was leaving. Sarah turned away, grabbed a suitcase, and started packing. She didn't care what Michael had to say. She didn't care if he suddenly changed his mind and tried to stop her. She was done. That was when his demeanor changed again. The indifference was gone, replaced by something far more unsettling. He stepped closer, his voice lower now, his words slow and measured. He told her she was making a mistake, that she couldn't just walk away, that she needed to think about what she was doing. But Sarah didn't hesitate. She walked out of that house, determined to never look back. What she didn't know was that Michael wasn't going to let her go so easily. Sarah spent the next few days at her best friend's house, trying to process everything that had happened. The betrayal, the lies, and Michael's chilling reaction when she told him she was leaving haunted her. She had always known him as a man who valued control, but she had never seen him look at her the way he did that night, like she was a possession slipping out of his grasp. It sent a shiver down her spine just thinking about it. She wasted no time planning her next steps. She contacted a divorce attorney, ready to sever any ties with Michael as quickly as possible. She also told her family and close friends about what had happened, ensuring that everyone knew she had left him for good. They supported her decision completely, reassuring her that she had done the right thing. Still, a lingering fear remained in the back of her mind. Michael hadn't contacted her since she walked out, which felt strange. He had always been someone who fought to get what he wanted. His silence was unsettling. A week after leaving, she went back to the house to collect the rest of her belongings. She had considered asking someone to go with her, but deep down she didn't believe Michael would actually hurt her. He was manipulative, cruel even, but she never thought he was capable of physical violence. So she drove to their house alone, determined to get it over with quickly. As she pulled into the driveway, her stomach twisted with unease. The house was dark, the curtains drawn, and the silence surrounding it felt heavier than usual. She pushed the feeling aside, reminding herself that she had a right to be there. With steady hand, she unlocked the door and stepped inside. The moment she entered, she sensed something was wrong. The air felt thick, as if the house itself was holding its breath. She moved quickly, gathering her things, keeping her focus on getting in and out as fast as possible. Then, just as she reached the bedroom, she heard a sound of faint creak of the floorboards behind her. She turned, but it was too late. Michael was there, standing in the doorway, his expression unreadable. He had been waiting for her. Before she could react, he stepped forward, closing the distance between them in an instant. The last thing she felt was his hands around her throat, squeezing tighter and tighter as panic set in. She struggled, fought with everything she had, but Michael had already made up his mind. By the time the house fell silent again, Sarah was gone. Michael took a deep breath, staring at what he had done. He hadn't planned it this way, but she had forced his hand. He couldn't let her leave, couldn't let her take control. Now he had to make it look like something else, an accident, a robbery gone wrong. He had fooled everyone before. He could do it again. Michael moved quickly, his mind racing as he formulated a plan. He couldn't leave things as they were. If the police saw the scene for what it was, they would immediately suspect him. He had to make it look like a break-in, a random act of violence, something tragic but completely unconnected to him. He shattered a window in the living room, making sure the glass spread inside the house. He knocked over a lamp, scattered a few drawers, and grabbed a handful of valuables, a few pieces of jewelry, Sarah's laptop, anything that would make it seem like a burglary gone wrong. Once he was satisfied with the settles, he turned back to Sarah. A part of him still couldn't believe what he had done. Just days ago, she was his wife, the woman who had shared his life for 8 years. Now she was nothing more than an obstacle he had removed. He forced himself to push aside any lingering emotions. This was necessary. She had left him no choice. To establish an alibi, Michael left the house and drove to a nearby gas station. He made sure to be seen on the security cameras, buying a drink and casually chatting with the cashier. He even called one of his co-workers, discussing work as if it were a normal evening. When he returned home an hour later, he called the police, his voice trembling with just the right amount of panic. He told them he had come home to find the place ransacked and his wife unresponsive in the bedroom. When the officers arrived, Michael played the role of the devastated husband perfectly. He cried, his hands shaking as he recounted his discovery. He told them he had begged Sarah to stay with him, but she had been adamant about leaving. He suggested that maybe she had walked in on a burglar and been attacked. The police listened, taking notes, but Michael could tell they weren't fully convinced. As the investigation progressed, cracks started to form in his carefully constructed story. The staged burglary seemed too neat. There were no signs of forced entry beyond the broken window, and nothing of significant value was missing. Detectives noticed that the house wasn't ransacked the way most burglary scenes were. The mess appeared deliberate, controlled. The biggest mistake, however, was Michael's own arrogance. He believed he had thought of everything, but he hadn't accounted for technology. Investigators obtained Sarah's phone records and saw that she had texted a friend minutes before arriving at the house, saying she was going to pick up her things and would check in an hour later. That message never came. Then came the most damning evidence: Michael's internet search history. In the days leading up to Sarah's murder, he had searched for disturbing topics: how to strangle someone without leaving marks, how to stage a break-in, and how long it takes for a person to lose consciousness. It was enough to destroy his carefully crafted lie. Michael's world began to crumble as detectives closed in. No matter how hard he tried to manipulate the situation, the truth was catching up to him. Michael sat in the interrogation room, his hands clasped together, his face carefully composed. He had been in control his entire life, always knowing how to talk his way out of difficult situations. But this time it was different. The detectives across from him weren't easily swayed. They had evidence, timelines, and facts that contradicted his story. The weight of it all was pressing down on him, and for the first time, doubt crept into his mind. The interrogation stretched for hours. The detectives presented the inconsistencies in his alibi, pointed out how the staged break-in lacked the randomness of a real burglary. They brought up his internet search history, forcing him to explain why a man who had just lost his wife had been researching methods of strangulation and crime scene staging days before her death. Michael tried to maintain his innocence, but the more he spoke, the more tangled his lies became. The final blow came when detectives revealed that security cameras from a neighbor's house had captured Sarah's arrival that evening, but no one else entering or leaving before Michael returned and called 911. There was no sign of an intruder. The only person who could have harmed her was him. The arrest came swiftly. Michael was charged with first-degree murder, and his trial became a media sensation. Prosecutors painted a chilling picture of a man who had become so consumed with control that he saw his wife's decision to leave as an act of defiance that needed to be punished. They argued that he had lured her back to the house, knowing she would come to collect her things, and had used that moment to end her life. The defense tried to argue that there was no direct evidence tying Michael to the crime, that the burglary could have been real, that Sarah could have been attacked by someone else. But the jury saw through it. The circumstantial evidence, the motive, the digital footprint, it was all too much to ignore. When the verdict was read, Michael showed no emotion. Guilty. The sentence was swift, life in prison without the possibility of parole. He would spend the rest of his days behind bars, stripped of the control he had once wielded so effortlessly. Rachel, the woman he had been seeing, gave birth while Michael was awaiting trial. She never visited him, never sent letters, never acknowledged his existence after his arrest. Their child would grow up never knowing the man who had destroyed so many lives with his selfishness and cruelty. Sarah's family and friends mourned her deeply, struggling to make sense of how someone they once trusted could be capable of such darkness. Her story became a warning, a tragic reminder of how quickly love could turn into obsession, and how dangerous it was to underestimate the lengths some people would go to when they felt like they were losing control. In the end, Michael lost everything: his wife, his freedom, his future. And Sarah, the woman who had once believed in him, became another name on a tragic list of those taken too soon by the people they trusted the most.